And this panel's topic is all about designing for small acreage landowners. In order to orient us to who the small acreage landowner is, when we have this person in mind, we have our beloved site director, executive director of the Black Family Land Trust, Miss Ebonie Alexander, here to really ground our conversation in the realities, the lived experiences of small acreage landowners, and then we'll have the rest of our panelists join us. So thank you so much, Miss Ebonie, for being here. The floor is now yours.
Thank you and good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out on the Thursday to join us. It is so important to us at SFLR that we have so many people join us and support us as we continue to do the work of our mission. I am Ebonie Alexander, Director of the Black Family Land Trust, one of the nation's only land trusts dedicated to the preservation and protection of African American and other historically underserved populations' land assets. Having said that, my topic today is the creation of an Office of Small Farms, which is a particular passion of mine. It grew out of actually some of the work that we do at SFLR, in that many of our landowners were not able to participate in USDA and other state programs because they didn't meet the baseline minimum requirement for participation. So when researching, what I discovered was back in 1998, USDA had a commission that commissioned a report called USDA, A Time to Act. And in that commission, one of the recommendations was to create an Office of Small Farms. Now, remember, this was 1998. They recognized then that there were specific challenges that small acreage farmers have that larger farmers do not have. It's estimated that depending on whose numbers you look at, some 70 to 86% of all farms in the country are small acreage farms. And those farms get less than 30% of USDA resources. As you can see on the screen, the definition that we've been working with is land size. We think and believe through the creation of an Office of Small Farms that the program should be based on the land size, not on who owns them. The soils will support what they can support. They don't know whether it's a Black person, a white person, a man or woman. They don't know. What the soils know is what they can produce. So based on acreage, 180 acres or less. The other characteristics of a small farmer are they have multiple jobs. They have an off-farm income as well as their agricultural income. Recently, I was in a conference where someone said, but for the off-farm income, many of our small farms would not make it throughout the year. The average age for small farmers are 50 years of older. And the Black community, it's closer to 72 years. Their equipment is old. Most of their equipment is 30 years old or older. Now, I've always said that this was a drawback. However, I recently was in a meeting where a gentleman said that their family's new tractor is a 1996 John Deere, and they refer to it as the new tractor. And what they like about the new tractor is that they can work on it should it break down. So it's important that our landowners, our farmers, be able to repair their equipment, even if it's old. But old equipment has its drawbacks, which leads us into the next characteristic, is that they have minimal access to technology, climate smart ag, precision ag, some of the other practices that we do in forestry. And that's because they need the newer equipment to actually implement those practices, and they can't do it with 30, 40-year-old equipment. And then finally, the last characteristic of a small acreage farm is that they tend to earn $25,000 a year or less. And when you look at that $25,000 a year or less, then you see why there has to be dual employment, why there has to be off-farm income. Oftentimes, it's the spouse that does the off-farm income because the family needs the health insurance, they need the retirement benefits. So these are the characteristics, but we're looking at 70 to 80% of all farms in the country that share these characteristics. It is critically important as we move towards the next farm bill that we look at the creation of an office of small farms, specifically for that 70 to 86% of producers that don't have access or full access to USDA programs.
Wonderful. Thank you, Miss Ebonie, for grounding us in that really critical information to guide our next conversation. And panelists, if you have more questions about Miss Ebonie's vision for the Office of Small Farms as it relates to the conversation we're about to have, please drop those in the chat. She, along with the rest of our panelists, are just have a wealth of information, and we're going to dig into that now. And so we can go ahead and begin inviting up our next set of panelists here as we talk about designing for small acreage landowners. So, of course, Ms. Ebonie will be on this panel with us. We also are privileged to have Alton Perry, who is the director of the SFLR program at the Roanoke Cooperative in North Carolina. We have Deron Lacey with us, the executive director of LRLEAN based in Fayette, Alabama. And then we also have Mr. Joe Friend, a forester from the Keeping It and the Family program at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. And so give a round of applause in the chat to our panelists. Excellent. And there we go. All right. So hello, panelists. Thank you all for being here. Good morning. I'm excited. I work with many of you quite closely, but I haven't had this opportunity to learn from you in this way. And so I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I'd like to go around the room here and have each of you share, and Miss Ebonie, you can build on what you've already shared in as much as you'd like to have each of you share who you are, what your role is as part of the SFLR network, and what does your work supporting small acreage landowners look like on a day-to-day basis. So who you are, what your role is with SFLR, and what your work with small acreage landowners looks like on a day-to-day basis. Let me kick it over first to Mr. Perry, and then I'll let you all jump in.
Bethaney, and good morning to everyone on the webinar. Glad to be here. So I am the director of the Sustainable Forestry and Land Retention Project at Roanoke Cooperative. Roanoke Cooperative is a rural electric cooperative in northeastern North Carolina. We are one of 26 rural electric cooperatives in the state of North Carolina. And we serve an area, a geographical area there right at the Virginia border, kind of next to Ebonie, 13 counties there. And we have a staff of 8. We have outreach specialists that do what the day-to-day contacting of our landowners. And I suppose it's my job to kind of keep that process moving and all the other administrative duties as a director would have to ensure that our services are reaching the audience that we need to. And so.
Oh no, we lost him. It could be a weather thing. Hopefully he's able to come back. Well, let's jump over to Mr. Deron while hopefully Alton's able to rejoin us here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Deron Lacey, and I am with LRLEAN in Alabama. LRLEAN is the Limited Resource Landowner Education and Assistance Network, and that's essentially what we do. Our coverage area is historically been in the Black Belt in Alabama. However, we try to assist landowners all across the state of Alabama. I was in Florence earlier in the week. I was down in Bowling, Alabama yesterday. So we just try to go where landowners need help. A lot of our day-to-day work is strategizing how we can assist landowners better. We go and try to educate landowners the the entire field of sustainable forestry is new to a lot of our landowners. So what we try to do is educate landowners on what sustainable forestry is, how it can work, how you and your family can utilize sustainable forestry to, help the environment, how you can utilize sustainable forestry to meet your management goals on your property. So we meet face to face with landowners on their property, try to give management assessments. One of the benefits of LRLEAN is myself and my staff. We all have experience working in government on a state level, and a federal level, excuse me, also, and we kind of know what the programs require, and we're able to help landowners, like Jonathan mentioned earlier. We walk hand in hand with them from the beginning of going in to get your clear title. Excuse me, not your clear title, but hopefully we can walk you to get your clear title, but taking you to get your farm and track number, to actually applying for programs, actually even helping them decide how they want to manage their property. Some landowners want to manage their property for economic returns. Other landowners want to manage it for aesthetics, and some people want to use their their land to educate other landowners. So we try to help them find ways to do what it is that they want to do. One of the things that we've recognized throughout the years is that small acreage landowners have fewer resources. So one of the things we do is try to find vendors that are willing to work with our landowners. Part of the difficulty in working with small acreage landowners oftentimes is, when we find resources, we also have to try to find vendors that are able to work or willing to work with smaller parcels and willing to work in, a lot of times, adverse conditions. A lot of my landowners have never had trees thinned. They've never had trees cut. So it's a lot more difficult for the vendors. It's a lot more difficult for the landowners to get help. So that's pretty much what we do on a day-to-day basis, is just try to bring the expertise and understanding about forestry that already exists out there in the agencies and the partners that we have. We try to take that and bring that to landowners so they can use it.
Mhm. Thank you, Deron. How about you, Mr. Joe?
Good morning. I'm Joe Friend. I work with the Keeping It in the Family program with the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. Been fortunate to be able to work with the program since it first started in Arkansas in 2016. I am a forester for the program. I spent 34 and a half years working for the state of Arkansas and the Forestry Commission, working with small landowners. And then I retired, and then I failed at retirement. So I came back to work part-time to work with small landowners again. And the Keeping It in the Family program has 18 counties in southwest Arkansas primarily. However, just like Deron, we are able to go anywhere in the state of Arkansas to help African American landowners, and we have gone as far north as Conway County and east up in the Delta, about north of Forest City and places like that. But in my career with the state, the biggest landowners I worked with probably owned around 200 or 300 acres. The difference is I did not work with any African American landowners except, well, I had a couple in Chico County and one in Ashley County, and that's about it during my whole career. And I didn't realize that African American landowners own so much land in Arkansas. And so it's been a real privilege to me to work with the SFLR program and the Keeping It in the Family program in Arkansas to help landowners that I didn't know until I got involved with this program that were there and needed help. But working with small landowners, if they own 40 acres or more, it's a whole lot easier than it is if they own less than 40 acres. It's getting to where you can't hardly find a harvesting crew that's willing to go into a tract for less than 40 acres. It's getting difficult to find crews that will do site prep, or especially if it involves mechanical site prep. And just to give you an example, yesterday we were on a tract of timber that's 15 acres, and it had beautiful pine. It had pine trees you don't see anymore in Arkansas. Some up to as much as 30 inches in diameter. And I would estimate 5 logs in some of those trees, all of them about 4 logs. Beautiful stand. The problem is it's 15 acres. Fortunately, right beside that 15 acres is another landowner that we had looked at sometime in the past that also has nice trees, and they have about 15 acres. So altogether, you've got about 30 acres of, mature prime saw timber that when you've got that many acres of that kind of tree, somebody will be happy to go in there and harvest. And it is time for those landowners to harvest and start over. But just one the landowners by themselves, it would be a real challenge. Even as beautiful as the trees are, it would be a real challenge to get someone in there to work on them. We also looked at another piece of property yesterday that is 40 acres. And and they had big, beautiful hardwood trees. And you think, yeah, be easy to get somebody in there. Well, no, not exactly, because this 40 acres is about a quarter of a mile off of the county road. And Weyerhaeuser Company recently sold a landowner a big block of land around that 40 acres. So now it's landlocked. And that new owner is trying to buy that 40 acres. So he's denying access to the property through his land. And the only way that he will agree for them to have an access is to build them a road at a very costly expense, because he's trying to buy their property. So that things like that create a real frustration, and it kind of ties up a landowner's options, because, well, they could take him to court and try to get the court to make the landowner grant them access. But in Arkansas, here again, that would involve building a road across that person's property at a big expense. So now, one thing about Arkansas, you cannot deny a person access to their property. However, that access only has to be on foot. As long as you walk into your property, you've got access. Now, when it comes to having a road across somebody's property to where you can get log trucks in and out and so forth, that's not going to happen if they don't want it to happen. So, that can be a real problem there, trying to work out a working relationship with everybody where they have access to their property to carry out the forest management practices they need to carry out. But we will try our best to help them work through that any way we can, and try to figure out what to do. And we will be having a Zoom meeting with that family in the near future to talk to them about what they have on their property and what they can plan to do with it and how to get access or whatever. But that's just some of the things we work with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those stories. And we'll dig a little bit deeper into some of those challenges and maybe some of the specific solutions you all are advocating for or working towards. Miss Ebonie, would you add anything just as you think about your daily work, the work of your team, what you're doing day to day to support the small acreage landowners in your community?
Just a little bit. We are of the 8 sites in the network, we are the only land trust. So we are the only one that can actually hold conservation easements, whether it's a forestry easement or an ALE easement or riparian easement. So that makes us a little bit different. We are a niche land trust in that we don't have a specific service area. We are invited into communities. If a community invites us in, that's when we come in and do our work. Our service area is Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. We do have a special project in Vermont, and one in Alabama. However, because we are a niche land trust, and because we see land as an asset for families and not for us, we will not typically accept a land donation, because if you give us your land, then it's not your family's asset anymore. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that our families retain their land. Many of you know the history of land loss in the African American community, and the fact that we went from about 15 million acres down to less than 2 million acres. That's important. A landless people is a powerless people. So that's why we don't accept land donations for the most part. The other thing is that we, because of a quirk in my personality, we do a lot of policy work. I am a policy geek. I love policy. I think everybody should love policy. I just don't know why they don't. Deron is smiling because I don't quite get his whole tree thing sometimes. But it's so important that as African Americans, we understand the way policy is made and the role that policy plays in how we do our work and how we live our lives. Usually what happens, the way policy has been working, is that we find out about the policy at the back end. It's already in place, and then we have to react to it. And oftentimes, because policy was made in the vacuum, it's not going to work in our communities, and we know it's not going to work. But if we say something or we raise a question about it, then we're complaining. It's not that we're complaining, it's that we weren't involved in the beginning. And it's important that we be at the table in the beginning. So every opportunity that I have to be at a table where policy is being discussed, I'm there. And I would urge each of you to take those same opportunities. Go to your school board meetings, go to your county council, your city council, go to your legislative meetings. Ask the questions, ask the hard questions, and make sure that people understand that you're not there for your own personal gain, but you're there to help make communities better, and that policy is important. And you don't want to appear that you're always arguing about something because the policy came after you were told, before you were told about it. So that's about all I would add.
Yeah, I want to build on that and then go back to my pre-planned questions. But Miss Ebonie, we have a collection of partners here who represent different aspects of the forestry sector. Many of whom have programs or opportunities for landowners that they're designing, and so or for organizations like ours. And so this maybe is a question, maybe it's partially a comment, which is to say, I think that model of making sure that the people who are going to be impacted by a program or decision, that they're at that table before the thing rolls out. I think that's a universal value. I had a colleague once say, "Don't make decisions about them without them," and I hold on to that as an organizational leader. Do you have any additional thoughts you might add for, again, our partners here who are designing things with our community of landowners in mind?
My advice or comments would be, look towards smaller organizations. Don't always look towards the large, what I call apple pie organizations, because many of them don't work with the communities and in the communities and with the landowners that we work with. I think was just really a poignant statement by Joe that in his 34 years of working with the state, that he had not worked with very many. He could actually count them, the number of African Americans that he had worked with over the years. Those people didn't just pop up one day. They've been there for generations, but they've been there quietly. They've not been involved in a lot of government programs. So as you're making and designing programs, reach out to organizations that work with people, really work with people, that are small acreage. They're the ones that you want to benefit from the programs. It's important that the people that you want to benefit have some say in how you design the program, because they can tell you whether or not the program is really going to work the way it's designed, and maybe help you tweak it, not being ungrateful, but just saying, maybe if we tweak it this way, it works better when you have a 75-year-old landowner who has 3 children that are working with him, and they all work other jobs. So maybe we can change some of the way we look at how we do it, and then make sure that the outcomes are realistic.
Yeah.
A tree is not going to grow in 2 weeks, 2 years, 2 days. You're not going to move a family that's been doing something for 3 or 4 generations in a year. It takes time to build the trust. And that's the other thing I think that people have to understand, particularly Deron, myself, and some of the other directors. We look like the people we work with for the most part, but that doesn't give us carte blanche and automatic, we trust you, we believe everything you say. It does not work that way. So I think that as we develop programs, we have to develop them to be realistic, and those policy pieces have to be part of that realism. We're not going to change a family in a year. It's going to take us a lot of sit downs, a lot of at the kitchen table having. I met with a family last week who I've been talking to on and off for 3 years. Last Friday was the first time we sat down at the kitchen table. Last Friday, after 2 to 3 years of talking. So it takes a minute. And I think that all of you, and we so appreciate investments of everybody. Believe me, we appreciate them. But help us do good work. And we can do good work when we know that we're doing it in a way that works with the consumer or the customer that we have.
Yeah. Thank you, Miss Ebonie. Thank you so much. And everyone, just as a reminder, please drop any questions you have for the panel in the question box. Be thinking of those because I'll turn to those questions here in a moment. Deron, I want to jump to you. We've talked some, and Mr. Joe illuminated some of these as well. Some of the unique challenges that small acreage landowners face in getting access to forestry markets or getting vendors out to their properties. Can you share more about that? If you have any specific stories, feel free, but tell us more about the complexities of helping a landowner get from point A to an actual forestry market in their local community, these small acreage landowners.
Yes, ma'am. I would love to. One of the challenges that has just been perennial from the beginning of the time that we started, that LRLEAN was started. Inserted myself into the beginning of it, but one of the perennial problems is with quality vendors, right? You know, we've done such a good job of creating opportunities. We've got, you know, the ability to get finances to be able to get services done, but a lot of the areas that I work in, I don't want to say that I'm trying not to be hyperbolic here, but there's not a lot of economic activity going on in these counties anyway, right? And when we can come in there with money, right, to help a landowner, but you know, we're going to have to get an operator from another county, right? And we're going to have to get an herbicide applicator from another county to come in. And, you know, I always wonder if there aren't ways that we could encourage more vendors in this work, since, you know, it is, building and creating economic activity in some of these areas, and maybe even to the degree of working with more vendors to help introduce them to landowners, introduce them to the subtleties of working with our landowners. Because if you're accustomed to working with large tracts of land, I mean, coming down that 15-acre spot, we were talking about earlier, that's not quite as enticing. And, it's in order to really service the landowner in the best way. I mean, we have to think about the whole process, I mean, from the partners that are providing resources to the vendors that are helping us to bring these services to the landowners who have these needs. And every step of the chain, right, has to be kind of introduced to this process because it's different, right? Back when I worked in forestry, if you go to a landowner and they've been managing their place for 2 decades, that's a different day, than when you go out there and this is the first time that they've had a dozer on the property, right? So, I mean, those little nuances make it difficult to serve landowners. We're excellent in creating interest, right? We're excellent in creating passion for like sustainable forestry and getting the work done. But oftentimes there's a little bit of a difficulty when it comes to getting vendors that are not, used to working in, some of these areas to come into these areas and work with our landowners.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Joe, I'm wondering, and I'll probably circle back to what Deron has shared here in a moment. But Joe, I'm wondering when you approach a project or a smaller acreage landowner, how is your approach different between a larger acreage landowner and a small acreage landowner? And maybe it's not, but if it is different, can you unpack that for us? What does that look like?
Well, there's really not much difference in working with keeping it in the family. We've not really had any landowners that I think about 250 acres is about the most that a landowner has had. The main difference, if you've got a landowner that's smaller than 40 acres, it's going to be very difficult to try to get anything done on their property. And another forester that works with our program, Justin Mallet, is in the process of mapping all of the properties that we have worked with and trying to work a connection where we can combine things that need to be done with 3 or 4 different landowners so that we do have a big enough area for a vendor to come in and work, or a logger to come in and harvest or whatever. One of the challenges that we face in Arkansas right now, there's no market for pulpwood. And so if you're a small landowner that's got even up to 40 acres of pulpwood sized trees, they need thinned. The growth is starting to be stunted because they need to be thinned, but you can't find anybody to come and thin them because I've heard of people getting paid less than $1 a ton for their pulpwood. And we're looking now at possibly trying to get cost share assistance from the NRCS to do a pre-commercial thinning on pulpwood sized trees just because you cannot move the trees. Hopefully that's going to be changed in a couple of years. Their Weyerhaeuser company is building a new plant close to Monticello, Arkansas, that is going to it's going to be kind of like cross-laminated timber, but it's going to be made out of small wood. Now, it's my understanding they're going to get the small wood from their own property. But if they do that, then that's going to reduce the amount of small wood that's going to other mills from their properties. So that will open the market a little bit more for private land. And also, we are hoping that a jet fuel plant is going to be built near Camden, Arkansas, that will be using small wood and converting it to jet fuel. So, we're hoping more markets will develop as we go along. Plus, we're trying to help landowners use better genetic trees and plant at a wider spacing so that maybe they only need 2 harvests through the entire growth of the stand, where we used to plant trees on 8x8 spacing, harvest the first harvest at about age 15, and then do a thinning every 5 to 7 years after that. So the trees got to be about 50 years old. Now we're looking at, planting wider spacing, better genetics, doing a thinning when they're 15 years old and doing a final harvest when they're 25 years old and starting over again. So forestry changes over time, and we have to try to, keep up with the changes, but it can be real challenging to small landowners to be able to do something. We're also trying to help small landowners find alternative income from their properties, such as getting in a climate smart program, leasing their land out for hunting rights, various things that they can do to get some extra income on the property.
Mhm. That's a great segue into my next question. And this is for all of the panelists. And I'm wondering, what solutions are you seeing? Like what is working? I know we've talked a lot about the challenges. But what's working well when it comes to supporting small acreage landowners? Mr. Joe started naming some there, but I see, Deron, you've come off mute. So what's working? What solutions are there that we can get behind?
Well, one of the solutions that LRLEAN came up with early in its creation was clustering landowners. And, really you have to make the land attractive if you want to bring vendors, especially quality vendors, into an area. And, one of the ways to do that is to bring landowners together. Of course, you have to have an agreement with the landowners. You have to have an agreement with the vendors to make it happen. But that way, that's a simple, quick solution to like, offer more trees, right? And that's been a solution that, really has brought the vendors that have worked with us from our time. That's one of the reasons why they work with us, is because they can get, several landowners together. And um, that's a solution that, at least for, a vendor, and, it works across the board as long as the practices are similar across the landowners. I mean, you can do the herbicide, prescribed burning, or, whatever practices are necessary. But those are some things, we try to find solutions that don't cost anything or don't cost more. And sometimes you got to put your head together and figure out ways to do that. But that's been successful for us.
Great. Miss Ebonie?
So I think for us, one of the things that's been successful is being able to partner with larger organizations. Partnership is so critical for my organization because we're small. So if I can partner with a larger organization that has more resources, both financial and human, then I can bring more resources to my landowner. It also is an opportunity to expose our small farmers, our small acreage landowners, to larger organizations, and vice versa, expose them to our landowner, because so many of them don't know that our landowners exist. So for me, to partner is critically important. The other thing is, as we build that trust, we have to be able to stand on that trust. So it's for our landowners, we're family to them, they're family to us. It's more than just sitting down at the kitchen table to go over a forest management plan. It's making sure that we help celebrate when the grandson graduates from high school or college. It makes sure that we're there to say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. When's your birthday? Or you said we had a landowner just recently who was putting in some irrigation. So we just went to help him put in the irrigation. I didn't help. I'm just because I would do something wrong. But the rest of the staff was there. I was entertainment for staff. But it's important that they see us as a partner, but a working partner. I think that's critical, that we're all working partners with our landowners. So it's partnership with larger organizations and then being working partners with our landowners.
Great, great. Deron, were you going to add something?
I just say, because of a very, very good answer, it's very true. One of the things that has been a success is I think the educating and awareness to landowners. I mean, if you think about when the SFLR network was started, very few people were going into any of these organizations and getting signed up for anything. So one of the things that we have been able to do is to take, the programs that you all have created and introduce those to our landowners and to create interest with our landowners in those programs so they can participate in them. I just want to add that in there as well.
Thank you, Deron, because that made me think of something else, and that is that we serve as interpreters and ambassadors. We're the middleman between state departments of forestry, between USDA, between state departments of agriculture, but we also help normalize the language, because the language of conservation and environmental protection is often exclusionary, and it's not something that people understand the first time they hear it, and they're not always willing to say, I don't understand what that means. So we have the ability to translate for them, and then you say, and they say something, oh yeah, that's what Granddaddy did when he used to move all the tobacco over to that field, or he moved the hay over there. It's the same thing in many cases, but it's in a language that they understand and they accept, and then they feel better about what they're doing. So thanks for triggering that thought, Ron.
Joe, would you have anything to add in terms of solutions? Like, you already spoke to some, but I'm wondering if anything else comes to mind for you.
One thing that we do with landowners after we've looked at their property and gave them recommendations on getting their farm number and signing up for equip assistance on things that they need to do. When you're out there in the woods with them, or when you talk to them on the phone, you need to do this and this and this. And then the next day or the day after, a lot of landowners are like me, and I say, now, what all did we talk about? What were we supposed to do? So what we like to do in Arkansas is try to get the whole family together with a Zoom meeting and go over the things that we talked about and answer their questions and try to explain terms like DBH and basal area and site index and things like that, but try to put it in a language that even, young kids can understand. And we also try to encourage the landowners, if they have children, get them involved, because one of our goals is to keep the land in their family for generations to come. And the only way you're going to do that is if you have those younger generations involved in what's going on and create in them a desire to do something with the land. Whether it, you know, a lot of times you run into the fact that most of the families never even seen the land, may not even ever been to Arkansas, let alone see the land. So, we try to encourage them to come visit the land and you can run into challenges with that too, because a lot of them live as far away as California or Oregon, and you can't just jump in the car and drive 2 or 3 hours to get to the property. So that could create challenges, but we try to do whatever we can to help them work through their challenges. And we do have now a couple of 6-passenger side-by-sides that we can use to give landowners tours of their property and help them actually see their property. A lot of times, if you can actually set your foot on the property and say, hey, I'm part ownership in this, that changes your perspective on the whole thing. And so we just try to work with them any way we can to encourage sustainable forestry and to encourage them to keep the land in their family.
Great. I think it's super important, even as there are many challenges facing these smaller acreage landowners. I know that you all at your sites are pushing for solutions, getting creative, relying on partnerships and relationships, and doing that really intentional work to find a solution that does work for that landowner, no matter how big or how small their holding is. I have a couple more questions here, but I'm going to turn now to some that have been offered by the audience. And this one is from Mr. Jackson, and it says, speaking of policy, I think this likely goes to Miss Ebonie, though perhaps Joe or Deron have comments too. Speaking of policy, how likely do you think the new farm bill will pass? And they've extended it, but have not heard of a solution of heirs property relending program, good or bad. So I know we can't predict the future, but what thoughts do you have, Miss Ebonie, on the farm bill?
Just before I came on this webinar, I was on a farm bill meeting, Zoom. So what I learned is that we will not have a farm bill in 2025. And it's unlikely that we'll have a farm bill in 2026. We do have some continuing resolutions that will push things through. The House has voted on their version of the Farm Bill, and we've all heard that, particularly around the significant cuts to SNAP. But there were other things in that Farm Bill. The House is trying to move the $10 billion left over from the Inflation Reduction Act into conservation in the Farm Bill. On the House side. Now, remember, all of this is on the House side. The Senate hasn't done anything. And we all should go back to YouTube and Google Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill becomes a bill. And then all of this will make sense. So the other thing that's in there is that they'll want to get rid of any climate program. So the REAP and energy program might be eliminated. The CRP program might be eliminated, but more money would go into some of the other conservation programs, which is, for me as a land trust, that makes me ecstatic, because then we'll be able to put more easements, which is a direct infusion of capital. But I think the Farm Bill is pretty much dead. We're going to continue to operate under the 2018 Farm Bill for the next year or more. It'll probably go down in history as the longest standing Farm Bill because that's the 2018 Farm Bill and we're in 2025. So that's where we are in that.
Yeah. Well, my question kind of builds on that, and feel free to tell me if you've already covered it and you don't have any more to say about this. But what policy solutions do we need in place at the local level and the federal level to make sure that small acreage landowners have what they need? You've talked about the Office of Small Farms that you're advocating for, but are there any other specific policies that you think we as a collective need to be thinking about at the local or federal level? Big question, but what do you think?
Yes, there's one more.
Good. Please tell us.
So as the previous panel on heirs property, we know that heirs property is one of the leading causes of land loss in the African American community. And heirs property is not an issue of race, gender, ethnicity, any of the typical demographics. Heirs property, particularly generational heirs property, is more an issue of not having the education to understand how you resolve it and what heirs property is. There are so many myths about heirs property. Second indicator is there's a lack of trusted legal services available to landowners for heirs property. There are a lot of lawyers, but everybody doesn't trust them. So finding trusted legal services to resolve your heirs property is important. And then the third one is there's the lack of flexible capital or patient capital to resolve heirs property. In Virginia, North Carolina, we estimate that it can come anywhere between $30,000 and $50,000 just to resolve a simple heirs property. If that can has been kicked down the road for 2 or 3 generations, it's because the family didn't have the resources to resolve that. So they kick it down the road to the next generation. So what we came very close, I hope Josh is still here from CHIP. What we came very close to in the previous administration, and we're working to see if we can get this administration to look at this seriously, is conservation easements. Is where you purchase the development rights off of a piece of land. That's kind of a short answer. So that means you have 25 acres, which is small, and we give you $150,000 to say that this 25 acres is always going to be used for agriculture. All right, that money comes to the landowner. The problem with the way the program works is you have to have clear title to even begin the process. If you have clear title, you can do it. If you have heirs property, you can't even begin the process because you have clouded title. So what we're asking is if the lawyers, those people again, can agree on some documents that can be signed at closing, because this is a real estate transaction, an easement. If they can agree on some documents that would say you relinquish your right at closing because we're going to write you a check for X, Y, and Z. So the criteria or what we'd need is we'd have to have a clear family tree. We'd have to have had family meetings to know what that family wants, who wants to stay in, who wants to go out, who wants to be bought out. We have to know the value or percentage of each person's interest so that we wouldn't be upside down. And if we can put those in place, then we could do a couple of things. One, at closing, move the land from clouded title to the title of a family trust. Those people who want to stay would go into that family trust. The people who want to be bought out would be bought out. The people who say, I don't want to do either one of those, just give me my half acre, then we give them their half acre, they get their own title. The proceeds, what's left from the easement after you pay off people and pay for some of the expenses of getting an easement, would then go into that trust, and then it would fund the trust for the agricultural enterprise, for the forestry enterprise, or it may be that the family says, we've got 150 acres, we're going to keep them in forestry forever. Every time we do a harvest, the money comes back to the trust, and we use that money to fund education for our family members. You have some flexibility with that, but you've achieved a couple of things. One, you stabilize the land ownership because it's not heirs property anymore. Two, you've stabilized the community's asset as land because it's not at risk of becoming something else, a trash dump. So often, and everyone on these calls know, you ride to a piece of rural property, there are 25 refrigerators, washing machines, all the tires from the state have somehow made their way to that piece of vacant land that is heirs property. So we're stabilizing and help cleaning up communities. We're also helping the environment because once that easement is there, we're not going to have any more bricks and mortar development. So that's a policy program that we're looking at. We're working with some other organizations to try to get this to fruition. We were almost this close to doing a pilot program in the last administration because they had a concern about heirs property. But that's a way to resolve the heirs property as well as keep the land and production for agriculture.
Great. Thank you so much, Miss Ebonie, for breaking that down for us. And to those who've asked in either the chat or in the Q&A box, yes, this is being recorded. We will be sharing this out so you can play it back, and we'll talk to Miss Ebonie about the best way you all can stay engaged with those specific policy initiatives that she's working on alongside the network. We have a few more questions here in the Q&A, and then I have a closing question for us. So one of them here from Jason, it says, is there any interest, and this is for everyone, any interest in new tax refunds for reforestation or deductions for forest damage from pests, weather, or fire? So I put this to you all, and especially our foresters who are on the ground with landowners. What do you think? Any interest in new tax refunds for reforestation or deductions for forest damage from pests, weather, or fire?
I'm sure that my landowners would appreciate any kind of help or assistance with their taxes. I'd have to look more into how it was shaped, but yeah, that's along the lines of some good news. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like Deron said, I think everyone would be interested in that. There used to be a tax incentive for reforestation. But then when the EQIP program come into play and landowners, it was fairly easy to get reimbursed for the practices that you did. That all kind of went away. But I think you can still claim on your income taxes, you can still claim the work that you do and the cost and things like that, but not exactly have incentive like they did have, where if you plant trees, you get to take this much off your taxes or whatever. So I'm sure the interest is there if it could be a comeback.
Great. If you all could wave a magic wand and change one thing about how we support small acreage landowners, what would it be? This is another audience question. Magic wand, you can change the world overnight. What would you do?
A holistic approach. Look at the reasons why these markets aren't emerging. Look at the reasons. I mean, because it's often not just one thing. These are areas where economic activity hasn't taken place since the 19th century in some areas. So I mean, going in there, you have to look at, well, we've got to look at all the logistics necessary of carrying this work out, because the landowners want it. The landowners are interested in it. It's just a matter of how we deliver it to them. So that will be my takeaway.
That's great, Deron. I appreciate how you always point us to at least in our conversations, how we're talking about the economy of an entire community. It's a whole place. It is the coffee shops where the loggers come to get their coffee that morning. It is the small businesses that are providing meals during the workday. That economic engine that's supported through the forestry practices on small acreage landowners' properties. It's a critical part of the whole.
And also it's such a bridge into community, right? Because a lot of times what we're having is a vendor from one county coming into this county, and they see, hey man, things are just the same as they are up there. So it's you meet people, forestry is something that all of us that live in these, environments, we share that in common, and a love for that way of life that's sustained in these, areas is in common. So it's just beautiful when we're able to bring people together and introduce new people and really just make community,
Great. Thank you, Miss Ebonie.
If I had a magic wand, I would change the image of who the small acreage landowner is, who the small farmer is. We have allowed others to define who we are, and that definition of who we are is not pretty. Some of the most educated and well-trained people that you want to meet are going to be in forestry and agriculture. But yet the image that Hollywood and others have painted of us is that we're dumb, that we're slow, that we're lazy, and we do this because we can't do anything else, when that is absolutely not the case. So if I could wave that magic wand, I would change that image and that perception of who we are and who we are as residents of rural communities. Rural communities support lifestyles in urban America, and they should know that. They should know that their trash is dumped in our community. They should know that their power comes from our rural communities. They should know that their highway system is a result of our losing prime soils and farmland to build an interstate that then puts a bypass off that makes our small town a ghost town in 5 or 10 years. We support life in urban America, and people should know that. And we should be given our props for that, but we should also be respected for our decisions, because people who live in rural America live there by choice. That's what they want to do. They don't want urban America. They live there for a reason. People who, though, that's 70 to 86% of people who are small acreage farmers, they do that because that's their passion, not because they can't do anything else, because that's important to them. And I think that, again, going back to waving that magic wand, that's what I would do, so that people would show respect and appreciate and not denigrate our lifestyle completely.
Yeah. Thank you, Miss Ebony. How about you, Mr. Joe? Magic wand, what would you do?
Well, if I had a magic wand, the first thing I'd do is take care of all of the air property issues so that we could actually help people work on their property. But of course, that's not going to happen. And I wanted to kind of mention what Ebonie said about living in rural communities. I live in the city across it, which has about 5,000 people. So it's kind of, kind of out in town in the country, I like to call it. When I go to a city, even as large as Little Rock, and you see all these apartment buildings, 4 or 5 stories high or taller, stacked up, and you think, how could anybody live in one of them places like that, and I hope we're not stepping on anybody's toes, but I got to be where I can feel the ground under my feet, go for a walk in the neighborhood if I need to, and and spend my time out in the woods helping people, and so that's what it's all about. But if I had the magic wand, I get rid of the air property, so it would make our work helping people much easier.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Joe. That's the perfect segue to the our final panel for today. But I just want to say again, thanks, Miss Ebonie, Deron, Joe, for being here. I'm sad that we lost Alton, and so my team has been working behind the scenes to figure out what's going on there, because his wisdom and experience is definitely missed here. But thank you all for talking about the needs of the small acreage landowners, which make up a large constituency, a large group of who SFLR serves and supports. So thanks so much.